Hey, happy Friday afternoon. Thank you for tuning in with our last of 2020 Fermented Friday talks. This is a big talk for us today. We're going to be joined by two really great guests, and I think that you guys are really, really going to enjoy what we have to chat about. Before we jump into our chat with Hollie Stephenson and Ryan Wagner from Guinness, I would like to just remind everyone that while there has been some craziness over the last few days with new restrictions and new guidelines coming out based on some jurisdictions throughout the state, Maryland's breweries are open for business. Even if some of that business is restricted right now, please reach out to your favorite local brewery. Figure out how you can order cans and bottles for pickup, either at curbside or carry out. Breweries are delivering using Beer Me or their own sales platforms directly to your door, and shipping is an option at many breweries. So if you can't get to your favorite local brewery and you can just go to the retailer right around the corner, make sure you're asking for a Maryland beer or buying a Maryland beer off the shelf and showing your support for this great industry. We've had a wild year. I know all of you have also, and we appreciate everything you've done to show your support for us, for these great breweries, for all the great men and women, and everybody who's involved in this awesome industry here in Maryland. So thank you. I'm excited about today's talk. It's been a long time coming. I emailed Ryan a couple of weeks ago asking if we could get them on, and Ryan's response was, I was wondering when you were going to ask. So I asked. They're here. Hollie Stephenson, the head brewer at Guinness, is here with us today. Hi, Hollie.
Hi, good to be here.
And Ryan Wagner from Guinness. We're going to call him the global ambassador or national ambassador and part of Hollie's jokes.
You got promoted.
I got promoted. Thank you, Jim.
Hey, we're Americans, man. The globe ends here.
I'd like to thank the Academy and the Hollywood Foreign Press. Thank you.
So thank you very much for joining me. I know it has been a long time. This has been a crazy year for everybody, and I'm very, very happy to have you both on to tell this awesome story, not only about yourselves, but about this great brewery that you represent, you work for here in Baltimore. So Hollie, as the head brewer, can you kind of introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what you've been up to for the last couple decades and what you plan to be doing there at Guinness, and then we'll jump over to Ryan.
All right. Yeah. So I've actually been in the beer industry for a little over a decade, and I started in D.C. So I was in government relations in D.C., got into beer after I became a beer geek, decided to go sorry, guys, hang on. Frank, be quiet. Sorry. Got into beer, went to brewing school, and got my first job out at Stone in San Diego. Was out there for several years, helped that brewery grow during the boom of the industry when everybody was growing 20 or 30% year over year. So I learned a lot about building breweries out there. Went to Asheville, North Carolina, was the brewmaster at Highland Brewing there. And got to help them kind of refresh and build a whole new lineup of beers. And then got a call from Guinness that they were building a brewery in Maryland. And I already knew that I loved the state of Maryland, and I knew Baltimore very well. And I mean, it was kind of, it seemed like a once in a lifetime call. So yeah, I got here 3.5 or so years ago, helped build and design parts of the brewery, and yeah, we've just been going strong since then.
That's awesome. So what does the day-to-day look like for you at Guinness? What are your responsibilities there, and what are you overseeing? You guys have your larger facility that oversees the production of Guinness Blonde and some other beers there. You have this great exploration brewery in the building. So where are your responsibilities?
So in both places. So I oversee a lot of the process improvement and kind of just, I guess, not day-to-day like boots on the ground in the production brewery, but a lot of the kind of manufacturing excellence and process improvement type stuff, KPI tracking, all that fun stuff. And then in the pilot brewery, I work with the group of guys in there to do either targeted R&D or just for funsies beers. So if you've come to the tap room, we'll have 16 to 20 beers on tap at any given time. A handful of them will be targeted R&D, and the rest are just like what we want to drink or an ingredient that we wanted to experiment with. So it's kind of fun because I get to have my hands kind of in both breweries, but I do tend to do quite a bit more in the R&D realm day to day.
Chris Sands from the Uncapped podcast is feeling for you, saying that he knows your number one job is keeping Todd in check.
Yeah, don't you know, Chris?
It only took 5 minutes for Todd to get made fun of.
I didn't even have to make the first joke. There you
go. It works out great. You've got them coming from everywhere.
I paid Chris for that one.
Bam would like to say hi to everybody.
Hi, Abby.
What's up, Abby?
And Ryan, tell us what you're up to, man.
Well, I was going to say the worst part is Todd's probably watching this right now and not working.
There's Todd right there.
Oh, there he is. See, what did I say?
What a beautiful guy. Hi, Todd.
World famous. Yeah, for me, it's I'll give you a little background. I started with Guinness a little over 3 years ago. Hollie and I started actually right around the same time. And my job is a bit of a weird one. I have my hand in a lot of different things and kind of play in a lot of different playgrounds for Guinness, whether that's education, training, media, PR, marketing, beer quality at retail and inside the brewery as well. So a little bit of everything. And I love that about my job. And I get to work with our staff at the brewery to make sure that they're living our pillars and living our ideals and living up to everything that Guinness is about. But then also making sure that everybody outside the brewery that's interacting with our beers or interacting with our stories, they're doing it the way that we hope they will. And it's a huge responsibility when you work for a brewery like Guinness, because so many people think that they know everything there is to know. I would say conservatively 50%, and it's probably higher than that, people walking through the gates believe that they are the experts when it comes to our brewery, our beers, our brands. And in many cases, they are incredibly knowledgeable, but we get to share news stories and tell them all the new things that Hollie and her team have been working on. And yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge in 2020 for sure, because so many of the things that I do are about that interaction, sharing our passion and our heritage and our stories. And that's looked very different. You guys are finding that too. Fermented Friday is a great idea to bring people together to have these same conversations that in years past we would have had at the tap room. We would have had face to face. So we're all trying to figure out this new hospitality model as we go. But I think in the long run, it's made my job a little bit more challenging, but also a little bit more rewarding, because we get to blaze a new path when it comes to interacting with the people that are still eager to come try all the new stuff that Hollie and the team are making.
I think you just made a very wonderful point there. This idea that people who are visiting you kind of have this, they already have some ownership through their experience with the brand and the beer. This idea of knowing the lore and the history, it means a lot to people. And that's a very great thing for an established global brand like Guinness. But when they come through your gates and in your tasting room, they're getting an experience that is meant for Baltimore that I don't think anybody can really pass up or deny when they walk in there. It's not like
they do
there to experience Guinness Stout.
Yeah, they do though. I think that it's we're very fortunate that we have that type of dedication among the people that love our brands and love our beers. But I also think that for some people it's a really hard first step. And I do agree with you, Jim. And I defer to Hollie on this a lot. But once we get them to try that first innovation beer, once they just take a sip of, like we're drinking Fall Saison right now, once they try something that is very different from what they came in expecting. I remember vividly this one gentleman that came in, this was probably a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, came in and it had been raining outside. And so he was kind of shaking off the rain and shaking off the cold, taking his jacket off. And I happened to be sitting at the bar back when that was a thing we could do. And this gentleman came up, and as he was kind of putting his jacket down and shaking, the rain off, one of our bartenders walked up and said, "What can I get for you?" And without looking at the menu, he said, "Yeah, I just want the regular, normal, everyday, regular Guinness." And our bartender responded with Guinness Draft Stout. And that's when he looked up and looked at the menu and he said, "Yeah, I just want the," and then like that light bulb went off and it was like, wait, what is that rye pale ale? I want to try that one. And so that was like seeing that moment in real time. And that's what I love, man. That's what we get to do every day, is you see these moments where people still, even now 3 years in, more than 3 years since we started the test tap room, our small tap room, there are still people almost on a daily basis who come in and say like, "Whoa, what is this?" Like I I knew about Guinness Blonde. I knew about Guinness Draft Stout. What is all this other stuff here? So there are challenges inherent to that, because I think for some people, it's almost sacrilegious that Guinness would do anything other than draft stout. But once they take that first step down that innovation pathway, it's really easy to convince them to try everything else.
I think that that's a very interesting way to look at it from one perspective. And on the other side of that coin, this is a new experience for folks who are kind of growing the market share of craft beer in the beer world. You know, when they come out, you and I talked a little bit about this earlier, there seems to be a hesitation about this idea of big being wrong, right? And the size and scale of a larger brewery may not be the brewery to support anymore, but they get all the experience of what they would expect at any other craft brewery, walking in and trying a great beer that's going to change in terms of availability when they come in the next time. And they get to have that light bulb moment every time they come in. They get to see something new that they haven't tried before. They get to have a new experience, and they get to make that experience part of the whole story. And I think that that's really what this beer industry is about.
Definitely. And I think, you know, all the breweries in Maryland, we're all kind of doing our own unique things. And the more of us there are to kind of open people's eyes to new styles and flavors and ingredients, like it's gonna make people more adventurous. It's gonna help all of us.
Is there there's always a commitment to quality, I'm sure, in every brewery. I know that from my experience working with other breweries and working in breweries. But is there an expectation that is way more elevated when you've got the name Guinness on the wall instead of, you know, Bob's Brewery or Hollie's Tap House? I mean, what are the expectations that you're putting on yourself? Is that a big flag to carry?
I mean, I can't speak for the consumer, but I mean, certainly for us, expectations are high. But honestly, I think, I mean, so I've worked at 3 breweries, fairly large to medium-sized breweries, and the quality standards are high. Like like you mentioned, they're high in our industry. So it's nothing oppressive. It's just a commitment that, fortunately, I think most of us make in this industry, which is why why it's growing so quickly.
That's awesome.
Or has grown.
Yeah, I think you're also, we're seeing an age where consumers are becoming smarter, and not that they weren't ever smart before, but they're learning more about the process of making beer, and I think that's a credit to the craft industry as well, and people getting up close and personal with the brewing process and with ingredients and with all those things. And so we're seeing the development of more refined palates in some circumstances where people are looking for that high quality product. They're looking to identify things that might be wrong. And so I think the commitment to quality, to Hollie's point, is universal. And for us at Guinness, I mean, it's quality. The first ever advertisement Guinness issued was in 1929, and the word quality is bold in the center of that advertisement. So quality has been a focus for Guinness for a really long time, but I think that's true across the industry.
I think that the industry has been doing a good job of shifting towards that, especially as we've seen shelves become more stocked with more SKUs, and the availability to get your presence known dwindling as the world becomes a little bit more open to the industry. Now, we've got a few people checking in. Hollie, Michael said that he ran into somebody that you may know on a Zoom call. Wanted to let you know about that. And
wonderful lab manager from Asheville, actually.
Oh, very cool. And Moco Asylum is upset that as soon as they went over the bridge, you guys came to town. So I guess you were just waiting for Moco Asylum to leave, and that made it easy.
Yeah, it was just everything was on hold, and then we finally got it done. That was it.
If you have your own questions or comments, we like to kick those into the talk. So please feel free to ask questions to Hollie and Ryan. Let's jump into this, because Ryan, when I came to see you today, we looked at a tap list that had tons of really cool sounding beers on there. We've got 5 beers to talk about today that are awesome looking, and I am really excited for you guys to share these. So you mentioned it earlier. We're drinking the Fall Saison right now. Do we want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, normally I would be happy to tell you about it, but Hollie's on the call, and she's there. So I will 1,000% defer to Hollie on this one.
No, this is actually this lovely beer. I wish you could see the color in person. Whoa, there I am. It's kind of dark golden, orangey, beer that is a Todd beer, actually. And he had the idea that he wanted to use quite a bit of wheat and rye in kind of this harvesty fall saison. So we actually got one of the saison yeasts from White Labs for this. It's one of the few beers that we don't use a Guinness yeast on. And so, yeah, we brewed this one off. And I think it's just like, it really is perfect for the season. It's dry, but you still get the kind of fuller flavors from the Belgian yeast esters. Like I said, it's a gorgeous color, and I don't know, the ingredients are just fun. And I can't believe how clear it got, having all that, like, yeah. Ryan, you called this out a while ago, but having all that high protein malt in it, it got super clear.
It's a beautiful beer.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a gorgeous beer. And, you know, we very necessarily and understandably are working with plastic cups at the brewery, like so many people are right now, just to make sure that everything is single use and as safe as possible. But bringing this beer home, this is the first time I've done it. And I know Hollie is right now is using one of our tasting glasses as well. Seeing this beer in the glass it's absolutely striking. And I love Belgian beer. And I love the functionality of Guinness ale yeast because it can do so many things. But using a yeast, a true saison yeast for this beer, I mean, the aroma on this beer is crazy. And Hollie, I don't know if you had joined in on the call prior to us going live when Jim mentioned this, but apparently he had already cracked into this one. So I'm curious to hear what you think about it, Jim.
I had a sip while Ryan and I were setting up, and this is delicious. It's a wonderful beer. It's great for the season. As soon as I drank it, I'm like, oh, this is absolutely perfect for late fall. I think it's delightful.
Yeah, we need to move through some of the kegs of this, or otherwise we got to change the name here in a couple of weeks, I think, right? Winter saison. Yeah,
it just becomes vintage at that point.
Vintage fall saison. I think that again, this is one of those beers, and why I asked Hollie if we could include this one. This is one of those light bulb moment beers, because, you know, as you might expect, we're making a lot of the styles that people are familiar with, IPAs and obviously Guinness Blonde. Baltimore Blonde is a big one for us. It's our flagship beer. But even within the stout sort of style and category, we have a lot of stouts that we offer people. This is one that I think, and we've seen it in the way that it's been selling since we put it on just a couple weeks ago. People are curious about a saison from Guinness. You know, they want to see, and that to me is very indicative of what the last couple of years have been for us, where we've been very fortunate to welcome so many people down. That a lot of the people that are visiting us now, again, expectedly and understandably, are local, because traveling is not something that's being done widely right now. And so those local folks who have been to the brewery a couple of times, they come in ready and willing and excited to try the new stuff on the menu. And we've done a couple of saisons in the past, but I think of the saisons we've brewed, this is my favorite, I think, by far.
I think it's fabulous. And if you are a fan of any of these beers that we talk about today, they are available at Guinness for carryout. You can enjoy them on premise right now until there's any additional restriction potentially put in place. And Ryan and I were talking earlier, they have a great curbside pickup set up. So if you don't feel comfortable getting out and being around others, you can schedule that ahead of time and they'll bring that out to you.
Yeah, that's one cool thing. We kept our curbside business going even when we were able to open back up. And I've definitely used it just when I was feeling lazy some days.
I'm one of those people that really enjoys going places, but I also don't necessarily like to have to get out of my car. I love listening to podcasts and music. So if I'm in my zone, I don't want to interrupt that. So I can see myself doing that.
The curbside program has been great too. Because I think due to some of the restrictions and also just getting into a regular cadence, we've been able to offer a lot more on that curbside pickup and to go crowlers in particular, things that are draft only for us inside the tap room. I think prior to us developing this curbside program, you didn't see quite as many options when you came down to the brewery on a weekly basis or daily basis. So now almost everything that we release on draft is able to take home either packaged, which we have some of our packaged beer that we're going to try in a minute, or through that crowler program. So if people are not comfortable coming inside, as you mentioned, Jim, being on premise, pretty much everything we offer you can take home through curbside right now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next couple of beers, I do have just one question from my perspective. If I walk into a local packy, I'm starting to see more Guinness brands show up that I know are brewed here in Baltimore. How are you determining which brands are going to make it out into distribution versus which are going to stay as exclusives in the brewery?
So it's interesting because it's kind of still evolving. The white ale and the milk stout, which you've probably seen in your package store next to Blonde, those were ones that we hoped from the very beginning that we would see come to fruition, either as a larger local release, regional release, or a semi-national. And so those two beers were born in our 2-barrel pilot brewery. So we had been planning those for a while because we thought that they would stand up well next to Blonde, and we liked them. Then there are other things that we have in the pipeline that have kind of come up more quickly and randomly because maybe they performed really well in the tap room and surprised us, or we just really liked it a lot and thought that we could make more of it and do well. So more of those to come for sure. A lot of our future planning right now too is, I think for a lot of people is not totally dictated, but somewhat constrained by availability of cans. So that plays into it nowadays too, as to what we can release and when and how much. But also the barrel age, which we'll try later. We've been doing, this was the first year we did 2. Oh man, I'm like backwards on your screen. We did 2 barrel age releases in September, and both of these were Baltimore born as well. So we hope to keep carrying forward the barrel age releases from our site yearly in one or two beers of fall. But so yeah, it's I guess to answer your question, it's still kind of evolving, but
that's cool. I'm excited to see that a brewery and a brand as large as Guinness has the flexibility and is still nimble enough to react to what the demand is in the market to really bring some of these really great ideas out and put them in the spotlight. It's definitely wonderful to see.
It doesn't feel that way sometimes, but then once you finally see it come to fruition, it is good to see.
Yeah, I'm sure on the inside it feels like you're moving a cruise liner or an oil tanker, and it's not very nimble at all. But the reality is, from the outside looking in, I think it's totally impressive to me to go in and see this proliferation of brands showing up bearing the Guinness name. I think it's great.
Thanks.
One of the classic Ryan stories that's kind of gone around. In my interview to get hired at Guinness, I referred to a company as large as Guinness as trying to steer the Titanic. And the response I got from the person interviewing me was, choose a different cruise liner next time.
You didn't think that through at all, did you?
No, not at all. I still don't know how I got hired. The other, when you talk about that though, Jim, I think what's important to remember is it's hard to refer to us as a local craft brewery. And I get that because Guinness, the 40-foot harp on the front of the building, and Guinness being what Guinness is, a global, brand. But there is an expectation that if you're going to brew beer in this country, you better do the kind of things that the breweries around the country are doing. And that's releasing multiple, SKUs, to use your word. That's different beers. That's rotating beers. That's seasonal beers. That's limited release stuff. So we are following in the footsteps of some of the brewers that Hollie mentioned that she had worked for in the past, but that expectation, and the consumer is, again, they're getting smarter. They're getting more versed when it comes to beer. And they want to see that level of innovation, creativity, diversity in the beers that are being made. So we have a lot to live up to in that regard, but I think, I appreciate you saying that because we've been working very hard to do that.
Well, I appreciate the look behind the curtain because it's always interesting to me to figure out how a brewery is approaching what they want to keep to themselves and what they really want to get a whole lot of traction with. And I think that you guys have a huge challenge, and I applaud you for being able to do what you're doing with that.
Thanks.
Is the next one in the lineup the Brute IPA?
It is indeed. So we go crowler, can, bottle.
All right. I am going to hang on the fall saison and tuck that Brute IPA away. I have to go pick up my daughter after this talk. So
anybody that's following along at home and having a beer or two, the most important thing that we say every presentation, every tasting, every tour, everything, drink responsibly, man, today and every day. It's become a different kind of equation because we're all at home so much, but I think it's almost more important now than it ever was. So yeah, no worries about that. This one is, if I may, before Hollie tells you all about it, I adore this beer. This one snuck up on me a little bit. Brewed IPAs were something that I experimented with, tried a few of them a few years ago when they were very popular, and wasn't really sure what to expect out of this one. But the nose on this beer in particular just blows me away, and I absolutely love this one. So
yeah, you poured one of these for me the other day, and I could smell it through my mask when you handed it to me.
yeah.
So this is a Caleb beer. Caleb wanted to brew he actually wanted to brew a hazy pale ale. We'd been doing some higher ABV hazy IPAs, but he wanted to do a lower ABV hazy. And I actually haven't checked the brew sheet, but this beer over attenuated by like 1 million miles. And I think it dried out to like 1.1 Plato. And so we did not use an enzyme in this. Most of the time when you see brute in a title of a beer, it's an indication that someone has used an enzyme to help the beer dry out, make it low calorie, make it super bone dry. But this just, the Guinness yeast just like murdered this. And so it ended up coming in at a much higher, at 5.8. So a little more than your typical pale ale. And just so obviously dry, but we loved it. And Caleb loved it, which doesn't surprise me because he came from Jolly Pumpkin, which is, everything's wild fermented there down to the bone, in terms of dryness. So we just quickly changed the name on the sign and proceeded as we were going to with the hop profile. We hopped it during fermentation, we hopped it post fermentation. And it turned out amazingly well.
At least hazy and brute are both 4 letters, so the spacing would change.
It's a brazy IPA.
There you go.
And then what is Hollie? It's Citra, Galaxy, El Dorado. There's one more in there.
Maybe Simcoe.
Yeah, Citra, Simcoe, Galaxy, El Dorado. Yeah. It's super like citrusy, and I get kind of a melony thing from it. It's a really great beer, and I think in the description I originally wrote, I called it slightly hazy, and then the one that I poured for Hollie the other day, she was like, slightly hazy.
Yeah,
it's definitely
depends on the glass.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hold it up. You definitely you're not seeing through that thing. I'll put it in front of my face. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, but that's entirely protein haze. We centrifuge everything, including our hazies.
Yeah.
How are you able to keep stuff in suspension after centrifuge? And the background behind that, and that sounds fascinating.
This is just a really clean protein haze rather than sediment.
Got it.
Yeah.
It looks lovely. I cannot wait to try that.
Yeah, it's a good one, man. And I this time of year especially, and I think it's also, you talk about the industry and where the industry's going, and I mean we're about to try 3 beers that are all north of 10% alcohol, but having beers on the menu, and Hollie talks about this all the time, trying to balance the menu, right? From a flavor point of view, from an ABV point of view, from a style point of view. And I think that anybody that works in the industry understands and appreciates the need for lower ABV beers. And it's kind of it's a strange world that we're living in where 5.8%, you're like, oh, thank goodness. But yeah, I mean, having that kind of beer on the menu, it's nice to have those beers that are a little bit more sessionable, where you can really appreciate the beer over the course of a couple of them, as opposed to some of the higher ABV stuff, which I can appreciate, but it's certainly a different animal, and it certainly creates a different sort of drinking session.
Yeah, you're going to appreciate them. You're just not going to appreciate 3 of them while in mixed company. It's like, that's right. One of those things where it's like, oh, I'll have that after everybody leaves and sit up on fire and have a nice time.
Now that we've said that, let's have 3 10.5% beers 3:30 in the afternoon. Happy Friday, everybody.
We're going coffee and coconut first?
We're going coffee and coconut.
Yeah.
We are indeed. And this one's great. The beer itself is wonderful, and the response to this one has been overwhelming, which is really great. But the other great thing about this is, one of the key tenets of what we're doing here in Baltimore and Maryland is trying to connect to the local community, whether that's just the people coming in and drinking the beers and trying the food or whatever the case may be, or establishing those relationships and those partnerships with people locally. So this is a collaboration with Vent Coffee. And again, I'm going to turn it over to Hollie, because this is a a relationship that I'm very proud to have played a small part of in the beginning. But Hollie has kind of taken this and just run with it in a way that is absolutely amazing. So Hollie, I'll defer to you on this.
Yeah, so we've collaborated with Vent again since we had the 2-barrel pilot brewery a few years ago. And I just, I had the idea for this beer. We were looking, we had some Imperial Porter in a bourbon barrel. And I had been wanting to work with Vent again. So I kind of came up with the idea for this. I went to Sarah at Vent and told her the flavor profile that the beer had in it, and asked her to select a coffee that she thought would go well with the beer. And she picked one that literally when I saw the label, it said, I think it said chocolate, caramel, and raisin. And I was like, that's just absolutely perfect. Because, the Imperial Porter itself was very chocolatey, which that kind of chocolatey sweetness was enhanced by the coconut that we put in it, because the coconut kind of feels soft and sweet. And then, the oxidative flavors that you get oftentimes when you barrel age can present as bring out more caramelly flavors in the beer, and also some raisiny. So it was just like, she didn't even know that, but she suggested that coffee, and I think it enhanced the beer flavor so much. And I think it's probably, it's definitely my favorite barrel age that we've done out of the tap room.
I would agree with that. Are you trying this one, Jim?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Caramel and raisin, like right out of the gate. There is no doubt.
And it finishes with that kind of sweet milk chocolate coconut and cold brew coffee. Like, we use coffee on the hot side and the cold side. We use the coconut on the cold side.
We this coffee, and I've had a couple people that have tried this beer so far, and I don't know whether it's other coffee beers that they've had or the type of coffee that they're drinking, whatever the case may be. They're like, the coffee is very light, it's not terribly present. But luckily, we've been selling the blend, or excuse me, the roast that Vent did at the brewery. We brought in some of the beans themselves from Vent to be able to sell alongside the beer. And Vent, true to their name, have a vent on the back of their bags. And so you can hold the bags up and smell the coffee. And when you smell this coffee, which is called La Finca, and then you smell the beer, you're like, oh, right. Yeah, this is like all coffee, because to Hollie's point, that caramelly, chocolatey raisin. And on a personal note, I don't drink coffee, but my wife does. And La Finca is her favorite coffee from Vent. So when we brought this one home, she knew immediately what to expect. So
I think it was their Nicaraguan.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am a big coffee drinker. I thoroughly enjoy coffee stouts. I really do like a huge expression of coffee with a stout. I think it's a beautiful interplay, but this is dynamite. It doesn't taste like black coffee in a beer. It tastes like the perfect blend of flavors. The barrel and the coffee are playing so well right now. It's not even funny. Hollie, this is out of this world.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy with this one. It was fun too, having Andrew and Sarah, the partners at Vent, come over and try the beer on the opening. But seeing them happy with it made me really happy.
Yeah,
Where did you get the idea for the coconut?
Well, we've done a coconut porter before, and we liked it. So we knew we liked playing with coconut. We knew where we liked to add coconut and how. But I think one of the cool flavors that can come out of barrel aging, I think usually a little bit later in the process, is that you can actually pull toasted coconut character from a barrel. From a charred American oak barrel. So I just thought that it would just enhance everything about the beer that we were going to be getting from the barrel already.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, is that available in trade, Ryan?
Yeah. So this one is a nationwide release, or as close to it as we can get at this point.
Wait.
No. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the next one we're going to try. My apologies.
This is 100 cases at the brewery, and
I was going to say, with the label that was on there, I was going to be blown away if that one was a nationwide release like that.
Yeah,
we got Vent's logo on there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
So,
I will say real quick about these cans. Now that I remember what beer we're drinking, I love what we've done with this sort of label play. So if you look at some of the other cans, and I think I might have something behind me here. So this is Fest beer from October that I just use for display purposes at this point. But that has the same kind of logo design. And I think that we wanted people to start seeing that consistent look and to start identifying those things as being, this is limited release. I've got to get my hands on this. I got to come by the brewery and pick it up. And so that's been fun. You know, you talk about developing a brand within a brand, essentially. And that's what we've been trying to do. So it's been fun to see, you know, we've noticed that in our retail shop, in our store, the more that we have released beers, the more you see the top SKUs in that store kind of crawling up the list, to the point now where every week, you know, any given week, 8 or 9 of the top 10 SKUs are all beer. And that's pretty cool, because that, again, that just tells us that we're doing the right things and that people are getting the point of this whole crazy project.
it's awesome. I had a question at the tip of my tongue. Oh, it was about the collaboration. So for a brewery as large as Guinness, is collaboration something that comes easily, or is that something that really takes a lot of initiative and needs to kind of be worked through?
That's another evolving thing and a good question. And even when it's easy, it takes a ton of initiative. Easy in context, I guess. This was the first time actually that we co-branded on a label, even though it's only 100 cases of beer. That was quite a hurdle. But you know, a good one, and I'm really glad we were able to do that. To give notice to Vent, who have done so many collaborations with us. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's such a weird business. You know, you get, for people that are not self-distributing, you know, your distributor often doesn't want you to distribute with someone who they don't distribute. You know, in a company like ours with that is so risk averse from a legal standpoint, just because we have so much to lose, I guess. You know, it's often hard to find partners that, you know, that you can, I don't know, do something with like this, like actually use a logo, just fully because of our perspective, not because of other people's. But yeah, it's tough, certainly tough.
I kind of asked that.
We've been able to collaborate with Diamondback and Monument City and Heavy Seas, and with Apex Honeybee Company.
Tennessee Brew Works.
Yeah, that was a really awesome collaboration. But that was a draft only release that we did with them. It was a barrel aged beer. Also, we went and brewed with them, and then they came here and brewed, and we actually released it 2 months ago. The weather was still nice, and we just kind of had a whole kind of Maryland themed night for the release, and it was probably one of the most fun nights that I've had, definitely in 2020.
Well, that's a great answer, because my curiosity is piqued. You know, we see collaboration being something that's kind of taken for granted right now. A lot of breweries are working together to collaborate on things. It seems like a logical step as a brewer to get together with your colleagues and work out new ideas or learn something from them or share an idea with them. And I'm glad to hear that it's not something that you are precluded from doing, and it's something that you have the ability to do with other breweries if the fit is right.
Definitely breweries, and you know, and we're starting a monthly collaboration series that I don't think we really have a name for it, but I've just kind of been referring to it as our allyship collaborations, where we're working with, you know, we worked with some local black beer geeks on our first collab, which is going to release in January. Our coworkers here on the site, our site is incredibly diverse. So a cool group of black coworkers and allies here on our site that's going to do the second collaboration release. And then we have others planned, like with our partner. All of these beers are going to benefit the Job Opportunities Task Force. So they're going to collaborate with us on a release. And then we've got a couple others in the works. So we actually are going to have a collaboration a month for the next 6 months, which is kind of insane to think about.
That's awesome.
That are all non-traditional, so not with brewers.
That's great. And because it was big in the news over the last few days and we shared the story about it, Guinness has made a huge contribution to communities in Baltimore through some fundraising efforts over the last few months and contributions going back to community programs. Are any of these collaborations going to be focused on finding ways to give back to the community as well?
Those 6 are specifically geared toward, they're being funded through that initiative, and they're specifically geared toward the Job Opportunities Task Force.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they focus on policy and training and research, all geared toward adult learning to help people become employed or to get better jobs, and more specifically to remove to remove barriers to equity for that to happen.
Well, I would like to say on behalf of BAM and the industry here in the state, thank you for being a leader in taking that community work under your belt and giving back. That's great.
Well, I mean, I would also give a shout out to Weathered Souls. You talk about Weathered Souls in Texas and the work that they've done with Black is Beautiful, something that I know a lot of our colleagues here in Maryland and over 1,000 breweries nationally and internationally have taken part in. I mean, that really kickstarted this conversation within the brewing realm, the brewing world. And I mean, we're just kind of picking up that baton and continuing to run with it. I mean, a lot of breweries are doing incredible work. We talk about it all the time, that the idea of an Irish pub is something that is hard to imagine here in the US, just because that spirit is something that's very unique to Ireland. But Irish pubs are places to gather and places to celebrate and places to mourn, where you go to find out the news of the day, where you go to raise money, where you go to do so many different things. And I think by and large here in this country, we certainly have our share of amazing Irish pubs, but brewery tap rooms have done that as well. They have found that spirit and they found that sense of community and belonging and taking care of the people that take care of you. So I think Weathered Souls did an incredible thing with Black is Beautiful. We were honored to take part in that. We continue to work with them on that project, but this was also about just taking another step in that direction for us and realizing that we've been really fortunate. And Jim, you know this, I'm a Baltimore kid. This is something that's very personal for me. I think that Guinness was very fortunate that they picked Baltimore, that they picked Maryland, because this is an incredible place to be. It's an incredible place to brew and to start a business and to run a business. But that also comes with the responsibility of taking care of the people that have taken care of us so far. So, I mean, Hollie's collaboration projects over the next 6 months are going to be great, but I think it also it extends to the work that we're doing with the Maryland Food Bank, the work that we're doing with the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, an incredible organization that is one of those things that if you don't know how much they do, when you find out, you're like, oh, this is an organization that not only celebrates and shares Black culture and Black history in this state and really beyond, but they're training educators. They're working direct to students with the digitization of some of their artifacts and some of their exhibits. So, I mean, there's a lot that we can do and a lot that we'll continue to do. Visit Baltimore. We're working on a diversity apprenticeship program within the hospitality space where there is not enough representation. So, I mean, for us, really, it's about 3 things. It's about economic justice, economic equality. It's about community empowerment, and it's about equal representation. So we're going to do everything that we can. And really for us, it's about listening to the people that should be listened to and elevating the voices that need to be heard right now.
I think everybody is aware that this industry has a lot of room for development and growth in this area. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it because it's something that hasn't been on the forefront of this industry's mind for far too long.
We need to do better, and we can do better.
And when Black is Beautiful, the initiative behind what they were doing at Weathered Souls with this idea to really raise awareness, there was a lot of speculation that it was going to end there, that people were going to say, okay, we did our part, we made a beer, and that's it. And I'm honored to hear what you guys are doing as a Maryland business. And I think it's incredible. And I think you're setting a perfect example for how other breweries can get in line with their communities and continue to grow what they've already been doing, which is community enrichment but now doing it with a little bit more focus and maybe a little bit more of a purpose.
Thanks.
Sorry, that was a heavy part of the talk, but I think it's very important that you guys are recognized for what you're doing, and I again appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Jim.
So I'm going to sit back on this coffee and coconut porter while you guys move on to the next two.
Yeah, we have so the two others that we were going to share today. The first is an imperial stout aged in bourbon barrels. For anybody, my favorite part of this story is that this is a beer that was 60% roughly of the recipe for stock ale last year. So if anybody was fortunate enough to try stock ale, which was one of our first wide release barrel aged beers, this beer played a huge part in that. But I always love to hear Hollie and Sean and all those guys talk about trying the imperial stout that eventually became part of stock ale and just saying, this is a pretty damn good beer and it probably needs its own release. Yeah, Hollie, I love this beer. This one to me is super chocolatey and raisiny and vanilla-y and all kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely pulled out my favorite vanilla notes from the bourbon barrels. So Ryan, what was that? What was the funny Untapped review that you read on this one?
It was the one that you were like, this is that's exactly what we were going for. There was somebody that, all credit to those that use Untapped. We love you. We love you, all of you. But there, sometimes Untapped reviews get a little off the rails. Let's just say it how it is. But there was one guy who reviewed Imperial Stout that just absolutely nailed it. And I read it to Hollie and she was like, that's it. That's exactly what we were going for. Yeah. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I mean, just tell us about the beer.
So we, like Ryan said, we just really loved this Imperial Stout. We didn't do anything crazy to it. We didn't put any special ingredients in it. It's just kind of your old school definition of the style. So it's a no frills, big vanilla Imperial Stout, and that's the way we wanted it. Maybe it's your dad's Imperial Stout. I don't know, but releasing something like this, especially next to the gingerbread, which we're going to try next, which has a ton of special ingredients in it. It's just kind of refreshing to see just drinking this straight up, and it's kind of like original, the original form, the infant form of the Imperial Stout.
Yeah, and by the way, I should throw in here, unlike the last beer when I said it had a nationwide release and it doesn't. This one has a nationwide release. I was thinking ahead to this beer, actually. This one is available across the country. And this is, it's always exciting, at least for me, I think I can say for Hollie and the brewers as well, for all of us really, when you start to see our beer make its way to Chicago and Detroit and LA and the Pacific Northwest, and you start to see some of the responses coming in. Because for the people here, like our backyard, our friends here in Maryland, this is old hat, right? I mean, they come down and see this kind of innovation and creativity from us all the time. But for people out across the country, it's become sort of a yearly tradition. It's become sort of a holiday tradition that they can expect to see some kind of new and exciting barrel-aged release from the Open Gate Brewery in Baltimore. And it gives us that national recognition and that national footprint. And to me, that's amazing. We want everybody in the world to come see us in Baltimore. And, the goal is always going to be to try to find those recipes and those beers like Baltimore Blonde that has made its way across the country. So when we see one like this Imperial Stout and the next one we're going to try make its way out there, it's a lot of fun. It's pretty cool to see the reactions that we get.
So I know in the past I've seen a bullet barrel aged Guinness release, and I think that's actually the only branded barrels that I've seen come from you guys. Is this part of that series? Is this made with those barrels, or is this a group of barrels that were blended for this?
Yeah, so it's not really, I wouldn't say it's a series. These don't have the bullet branding on them, but they're all bullet barrels from our family. Yeah.
Well, it's a fine whiskey, so. Is sourcing for barrels an easy operation for you guys? You have this fortunate tie-in to a lot of other large brands in the spirits realm, and it seems like it would be easy, but does your workflow and your business workflow allow that kind of opportunity to happen naturally?
I would say it's relatively easy. Having, I'm not sure what the barrel supply is like out there nowadays, but having been at other breweries when it was hard to get barrel contracts, I'm not sure if it's still like that, but we definitely are not up against that here necessarily, because we often have supply either at Bullet or down at George Dickel. And so, I think we've like purchased some barrels through a broker, I think, for like to supplement what we had, but we purchased our own barrels through the broker. But I would say that it's relatively easy, and our business is set up to do it. So that's a very good thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm listening and I'm participating, but I'm looking for that review because I want to find it. But I do want to say that somebody just commented something that we see pretty consistently that makes me laugh every time I see it, which is, this isn't a bad barrel aged beer for a brewery that's really new to barrel aging. Not realizing that for about 230 years, all we did was age beer in barrels. It always kind of makes me laugh, and it's funny, we are very much taking advantage of heritage. Now, barrel aging for Guinness 200 years ago is certainly not what barrel aging is today.
You're not talking rich bourbon barrels at that point, right? You're talking bourbon barrels.
What's interesting, they weren't bourbon barrels, but all of the barrels that Guinness used in Ireland were made from American wood, believe it or not. So using the use of American wood is something that is very much a part of the history of Guinness. But awesome. It's sort of interesting again, this is showing something to people that they think is new and creative and interesting. And in some ways it is, but in other ways, this is just pulling on the heritage that we already have that's there. It's a lot of fun. And you also start to notice that there are certain things that you have to come to the brewery to understand. We have a lot of people that comment about these two beers when they try them, that it doesn't really taste like a nitro stout. And it's like, well, no, it's not. It's not a nitro stout. But that's just so much a part of people's association with or experience with Guinness, that we're changing that conversation every chance we get.
I'm prepared to run over by a few minutes, but we've got 7 minutes left in the normal hour that we do. I don't know if both of you have a pressing engagement at 4, or if we should rush through the last beer, but I want to give it some time because I think it's a very interesting and unique release. Do you want to move right on to that, or do you want to talk a little bit more about this story, or does this kind of lead into the next one?
I'm good. My hard stop is at 4:20. So. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
I won't make any jokes, don't worry.
I also, the other thing I would mention about this beer, and we kind of talked about it with it being part of the stock ale conversation, but also the next one, the gingerbread stout. It's fun for us, and I think fun for anybody that comes to the tap room, to see the evolution of these beers as they go from little itty bitty to a little bit bigger to then a wider release. We can see them throughout their lifespan, so to speak. The Imperial Stout starting as a part of stock ale, the gingerbread stout that we're going to try here in a minute, starting as a brewery only release and getting a great reaction and getting a great response, and so eventually making its way to a wider release. The same could be said of white ale and milk stout. Jim, you mentioned seeing them on shelves. So that flexibility, that ability to learn a lot in the tap room from the people that are coming in and ordering the beers and giving us feedback and giving us insight. That's something that I think, again, maybe people wouldn't associate with a brewery like Guinness, with something as big as Guinness. But we are learning an awful lot from the tap room. We're learning a lot from the people that are coming in every day and giving us their feedback.
I think that's got to be a very cool paradigm shift, to come from a place where you're kind of lauded for doing what everybody expects and appreciates and truly loves, and then having input now because of what your business looks like in Baltimore, where you're getting maybe new ideas or new input to kind of help propel you into the future. I just think it's a fascinating study in what can be done in both consumer feedback and in practicality for what the longevity of the industry looks like.
Definitely.
So let's go ahead and talk about that gingerbread spiced stout.
All right.
I'm excited to hear the story behind this one.
Yeah. So this one is definitely on the light color spectrum and roast spectrum for an imperial stout. We wanted it to stand out from the co-release. And we wanted it to be approachable because we were having fun with it. So we used gingerbread spices in this. So we actually used ground ginger, ground allspice, ground cinnamon, and ground nutmeg in the whirlpool. So exclusively spiced in the whirlpool, and then aged in barrels on this one. So you get definitely like the baking spice from a gingerbread cookie. And you get the added sweet notes from the barrel aging. So this one wasn't in barrels for as long. And I think like the younger barrel aged stouts pick up more vanilla and kind of less of the more like kind of tannic or coconutty flavors from wood. So it's just kind of I think it just kind of enhances the sweetness on this one, and I don't know, it just goes really well with the baking spices. But this beer was, it was actually our kind of holiday celebration beer last year in the tap room. And we were like, wow, okay, like we really liked that. And it's actually a scalable recipe. So let's go ahead and hurry up and brew it in the 100 and get it in the production brewery and get it into barrels. So we were able to release it this past fall.
This one to me, I think you could say this about a lot of high ABV beers, certainly about a lot of barrel-aged beers. As it warms, this one changes like multiple times. Because we've been chatting for almost an hour, this one has been on the table here next to me before I poured it. It's super gingery as it warms up. Like I'm getting a lot of like almost like a ginger beer kind of quality to it. It's really good and it's fun. And I think it's something that people recognize. Certainly when you talk about gingerbread, they go in knowing what to expect from a flavor standpoint. But I also think that something that has always amazed me about the beers that we make and we release, there is a drinkability to them that I don't think you find an awful lot in similar beer styles and in similar flavor profiles. Sometimes beers like this can become a little overpowering, can become they're just very bold. And not that this one isn't flavorful and isn't bold in its characteristics, but at the back end of this, it is still very much its base beer. And it's still very much drinkable and approachable. To Hollie's point, we wanted this to be something that even at 11%, and again, a reminder to please drink responsibly, we wanted this to be something that could be enjoyed and could be shared by people who may have bought it because they were Guinness drinkers, Guinness draft drinkers. I mean, they're going to go home and they're going to find that this is something very different and very unique. But because of its drinkability, because of its approachability, I think that this is a beer for a lot of people to enjoy.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, that's an interesting comment to make, Ryan, because you know, our yeast for years has been trained to be a dry fermenter.
Yeah.
And it's still, I mean, we can certainly make it, coax it to finish high through our mash temperatures and other things. But we do like that it finishes dry, which I think increases the drinkability. And a lot of it too is just, you know, if you had a different set of brewers in here, things might be bigger and sweeter, but we're, you know, this tends to be our preferred range, I think, in terms of, you know, body and drinkability.
Yeah, there is a real fine line between bringing all of the body and character of a beer like this with such a. I don't have an open bottle with me right now. I'm still on that coffee porter that's delicious, but you know, when you tend to get these hugely aromatic beers, plus you're matching in the barrel aging and all that, the cloying sweetness tends to be something that accidentally hangs on a lot, I think, in representations that you see. Ryan and I were talking about another brewery's gingerbread stout earlier today, and to Ryan's point, that's one of those beers that you have a little bit of and you're like, man, thank you so much for sharing that with me, or thank you, I'm glad I got to buy my bottle this year. But it's not something you want to revisit for a longer night of drinking or have one every single night. And if you're able to execute the drinkability with something that has so much impactful flavor, I think that's really the key.
When I worry that drinkability has almost become a dirty word.
I don't think it is. To me,
I hope not. But
I'm going to go drink a 6-pack.
Yeah. when you look at the way that the market is trending, when you look at some, and I realize that commentary on social media or on reviews or whatever the case may be, I mean, oftentimes it is the loudest and most passionate people that are making those comments. But I worry that sometimes we get caught in the trap of judging, I guess I should say, equivocating uniqueness with quality, or uniqueness with drinkability, or drinkability with a lack of uniqueness, if that makes sense. And I worry about that, because there is something to be said. And if you talk to brewers, and Hollie, please correct me if I'm wrong, which I often am. But if you talk to brewers, drinkability is something to be sought. Like, balance is something to be sought. And I mean, if you're looking at a particular style or particular ingredients, maybe that's not the case. But I've always appreciated the fact that even when we make a beer that isn't necessarily the beer that I want to drink, there are things that can be appreciated about it. And I think that that's true of a lot of brewers around the country, that you can appreciate the craft, you can appreciate the balance, the drinkability, whatever it is. But sometimes I think that too often the shock value of something overtakes its drinkability, its approachability.
Which is fine.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
There's
yeah.
Certainly.
Yep.
I don't know that it needs to be what defines the industry or beer.
Right.
Like, that to me seems like it's a little belligerent, and it kind of boxes out things that are intended to just be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those beers are what drive a lot of excitement and entry into this kind of, I don't know, beer geek community that we have. And then I have nothing against that, but to your point, like, yeah, I think definitely, like, the word drinkability kind of triggers kind of macro thoughts in people's heads sometimes.
Yeah.
And to that point, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I think anybody who cannot connect quality to drinkability and quality to large scale production and large successful breweries may not have a very strong grip on the definition of quality, because you may not prefer a flavor of something, but to say that somebody's doing it in a way that is not good or well done because it doesn't meet your flavor profile, I think is disingenuous.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation that I hope we can have on.
Sure.
Join us on next week's podcast.
Well, I want to let you both go this afternoon. Thank you so very much for joining me. And my coworker Kelly threw a great comment in. Can't imagine a better ambassador for Guinness or a better brewer. I definitely echo her sentiment. You two are great. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, not only as ambassadors of Maryland beer and of your own brands, but in your community directly. Please keep up all the great work. And I look forward to chatting with both of you very, very soon. I hope you have safe holidays and your families are safe.
Awesome.
I want to do a quick thing real quick. If anybody wants to come down and visit the brewery or curbside, just head to GuinnessBreweryBaltimore.com. All the information, the FAQs on our safety protocols. A huge shout out to our staff. They've just absolutely been rock stars during all of this. And also continue to support Maryland breweries, man. It's needed now more than ever. We have a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, a lot of breweries that we love and appreciate and continue to support. So I hope everybody keeps doing that.
I was going to even throw it to you, and you just stole it right away. You knew it.
I'm sorry. Hollie will be the first one to tell you. I have a bad habit of doing that. So that's
right. That's why you're there, man. That's why you are the soon-to-be global ambassador.
Global ambassador. I did it.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. If you have any questions for Hollie or Ryan, throw them in the comments. We'll look back over the next couple of days and forward them on and hopefully get you answers. Please go visit Guinness. Their location is beautiful. They're doing all the right things to keep you safe. The beers are top-notch. Their staff is incredible, and they are a real part of Maryland beer. So do not ever get that twisted. Also, if you have any questions about what the rest of Maryland beer is doing, visit us at marylandbeer.org. Check out all the great things that our members are up to. Visit their social media, and please place your orders for Maryland beer this weekend and throughout the holiday. I will see you after the new year with a new Fermented Friday chat, and we look forward to meeting you again. Everybody have a safe time. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.